us a status check. The Senate is going to start its markup this upcoming week. What does that mean in terms of your timing? Tell us how you visualize this moving forward.
So, Maria, as you point out, that's exactly where we are. But we had a really good week last week. The House got the bill through the Ways and Means Committee. So the bill in the House is out of committee, which means it will go to the full House next week. Or this week. I guess it's this week, right?
Yeah, this upcoming week, right?
We're going this week to the full House. The full House will start debating their version of the tax bill this week. The Senate will be in committee for the entire week. We think by the time they leave by Friday and go home for Thanksgiving, we will have the bill out of the Senate Finance Committee. So hopefully by the time we get to Thanksgiving recess, we will have the tax bill completely out of the House and through the Senate Finance Committee.
There are a couple of differences, like, for example, the Senate wants to delay the 20% corporate tax rate for 1 year. What do you think stays, what goes when you actually put these two bills together, the House and Senate?
Look, that's going to be up to the conferences or the conference committee. This is the normal way that bills are legislated in the House and the Senate. The House has their version. The Senate has their version. They'll both get through a final voted version. We'll probably end up with the conference committee. And those conferences will decide what stays and what goes. And they'll pick and choose the different parts that they think are important. And they'll pick the pay-fors. And they'll come up with a compromise bill. It will go back to both chambers. And both chambers will vote on the exact same bill. And that's how we'll end up with a tax law.
Let me get sort of down and dirty with you on these details. Because you've got $1.5 trillion. And that was agreed upon in the budget to spend on tax cuts, $1.5 trillion. $900 billion of that $1.5 trillion is the business cuts. So is it fair to say that you are raising taxes on people like me, people like you, and millions of others in New York and New Jersey and California as a way to pay for a 20% corporate rate?
So, Maria, what people are missing is we have $1.5 trillion net. What's in this bill, what's hidden in this bill, it's not really hidden, you just have to go through and do the math, is there's over $5.5 trillion of tax cuts. And then there's over $3 billion of base broadeners. So there are a lot of moving pieces within the bill to get to the $1.5 trillion. So you have to look at the bill in its entirety. You can't just say, oh, it's X or it's Y. It's a combination of everything that gets us to that $1.5 trillion.
I understand that, because a 20% corporate rate is going to impact everybody. You hope that it's going to move the needle on economic growth. The elimination of the AMT, you hope, is going to hit a lot of people. But the fact remains, when you eliminate the state and local income tax deduction, I'm getting a tax increase. If you're in New York, you're probably getting a tax increase. So, I mean, you're raising taxes on some people to pay for a corporate tax cut.
Remember what our objective was. The president had two main objectives. Number one, a middle-income, hardworking middle-income Americans deserve a tax cut. They deserve to keep more of their hard-earned income. Both bills do that. Number two is that we lower the business tax rate. We lower it for corporates and we lower it for pass-throughs. We lower it for small and medium-sized businesses in America. We need to do that because we're not competitive with the rest of the world. We need to be able to compete with the rest of the world. We need to allow our companies to be able to sell their products around the world. The tax rate that our businesses are paying today make them non-competitive. When they become competitive with the rest of the world, you know what they're going to do? You know this very well. They're going to grow their businesses. They're going to expand, they're going to buy more equipment, and more importantly, they're going to hire more people and they're going to pay them higher wages. That's how we're going to grow the economy. That's how we're going to pay for the tax bill.
Maya McGinnis from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget says that tax cuts that add to the debt do less to grow the economy than fiscally responsible reform and may even hurt the economic growth over the long term. She basically says, sure, you'll get some growth, but growth cannot pay for this. That's why you have to raise taxes on some people, right?
We believe we're going to get enough growth. We believe we're going to get more than enough growth to pay for this. Look, this goes back to how do you grow the economy? You grow the economy by making your businesses, all businesses, small, medium, and large businesses, competitive. Allow them to compete on a level playing field. Allow us to sell our products around the world and allow us to hire our people and pay them more money.
Yep.
That's how we're going to pay for the bill. That's how we're going to grow the economy. When we do that, the history shows us we grow our economy and we're able to start paying down our deficit when we do that.
I'm just wondering if this is going to mean a mass exodus out of places like New York, which is what people are expecting, because certain people are going to pay higher taxes when they lose that deduction. Do you expect a mobility? Do you expect mobility, people moving out of New York? Because they're saying, why am I paying 53% 3% when you include, state, local, and you go to Florida and you pay no income tax.
Well, Maria,
Zero.
That's been happening already.
Yeah.
If you look at the Texases and the Floridas, those states have been growing at a much more rapid rate. If you're a business person today looking to expand, you look at the states that provide you a competitive advantage because of the tax differential. So that's already been happening. So as businesses expand, they've been looking at the tax differential that's been going on already.
And you make a good point during the commercial break. How come Florida has been able to manage itself so well with no state income tax? Here's what your partner in all of this, Steven Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary, had to say about this when I asked him a similar question this week.
For people who make over $1 million in the high tax states, there will be a tax increase. The president's focus is this is on a middle income tax cut. This is about businesses being competitive. Obviously, people in this room will benefit from the business tax, but this is not about tax cuts for the rich.
And yet you've got, as a result of the elimination of that deduction, people like Congressman King, Peter King of New York, saying, I'm a no vote. Do you have the votes here? Look what's going on. You've got Roy Moore facing incredible allegations, sexual allegations. You've got Rand Paul on the Senate side with broken ribs because of an attack by his neighbor. Once again, we're faced with a situation of, is this deja vu healthcare again? Are you going to get the votes?
Maria, I'm confident that we're going to get votes. We got the bill out of the Ways and Means Committee with 24 votes on Thursday last week. It was 24-16. So look, so far every vote has gone the way we thought it would go. We're optimistic that we're going to continue to get the votes. Look, time is going to tell, but we'll be in the Senate Finance Committee this week, and we'll be in the full House this week.
How scary was last week's elections for your team when you see the Democrats taking New Jersey, taking Virginia, taking again de Blasio in New York City? Is this a signal of what's to come in the 2018 elections?
I think the elections, once again, are screaming at Washington saying, look, we want you in Washington to get things done and legislate. And this is, again, a loud wake-up call for everyone in Washington that the electorate wants Washington to legislate. This is why we have to get tax reform done.
When you look at what's gone on in terms of the spending side of the story, $500 billion overspending in the 18 budget, another $500 billion overspending in the 19 budget, obviously at some point something's got to give. You've got these entitlement programs going broke in the next 12 years. When does the debt become a priority? I know that your priority right now is growth. Right. But when does the debt, the $20 trillion debt, become a priority? And does that mean you have to cut the spending on entitlements?
Look, right now, the president is concerned about growing the economy. Our first three priorities, as you know, are about growing the economy. We've started with reg reform. We're going into taxes. When we get done with taxes, we're going to be talking about infrastructure. As soon as we get done with taxes, I'm going to be right back here talking about infrastructure and spending money on infrastructure because our infrastructure is woefully behind where it should be. Those are the first three priorities of the administration. We do believe those three priorities are going to make us dramatically more competitive in the world, which means we can grow our economy. When we grow our economy, we will have dramatically more revenue coming into the system. Hopefully, we can save that revenue and not spend that revenue and start paying down the debt.
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned regulations, and this president has been really the least regulatory president. He's already pushed the number of federal pages, the Federal Register, down by 30%. So he's been cutting regs. And I do believe that's one of the reasons we're seeing a 3.1% economy right now. When you look at the technology sector, the tech sector, the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world, they know more about us than ever before. They are incredibly powerful. Should they receive more regulation, a heavier hand from government?
Well, look, I think Congress is looking at that right now, and they're talking about what should be the impact on these companies and what business model do these companies have and what business line are they in. If they're competing with businesses that are actually regulated, that's the question that Congress is trying to figure out right now. And I think that process is going through a normal process, and we'll let that process continue to go.
Should the DOJ be forcing AT&T Time Warner to do something different in order to get that deal done?
Look, the White House is not involved in that. That's a DOJ effort, and it's up to the DOJ what happens there.
Let me ask you, Gary, obviously you were on the short list of the chairman of the Federal Reserve. The president named Jay Powell as the next chairman of the Fed. How do you feel about that? Did you want that job?
I'm really excited that Jay Powell is the next chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank. I'm excited to work with Jay. The president made the right selection in choosing Jay for that job.
And there's a lot of talk that you're going to get tax done and then you're going to leave the administration. Are you making plans for your next gig here?
I'm really happy executing the president's economic agenda. I think we're making an enormous amount of progress. As you just said, we've had 2 consecutive quarters of over 3% GDP growth. And I think that's because of the president's economic agenda, and I'm happy to be part of his plan.
Gary, if you get this done, this is going to be historic legislation. We're watching, the world is watching to see actually this is going to have an impact on economic growth. When do you think people are actually going to feel it? Oh, the tax plan passed, and I'm actually feeling different. I'm feeling like I have wiggle room in my life, my personal life, because taxes just went down.
So, Maria, we hope that people feel it the beginning of next year. Look, one of the important aspects of the tax plan for every business is they can start 100% expensing next year. When companies can start expensing, they're going to think about spending money and building out factories, building out equipment, hiring people. When that starts running through the economy, we think that people will feel that. We think that people will feel job creation and wage pressure starting next year.
They may not feel the 20%, though. Does that save $100 billion just by delaying it 1 year?
But even if that gets delayed a year, everything else in the bill goes into effect January 1st. Full expensing goes into effect January 1st. So expensing becomes even more valuable if the 20% is delayed.
Gary, it's good to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Gary Cohn going through the tax plan with us. We appreciate it.